Hey, everybody, it's Lee. I want to start just a little bit early, just so we can check and make sure that I've got all the right buttons pushed and I'm looking and you can hear me and you can see me and all that kinds of good stuff. So let me know. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Kaylin says good to go. I hope that's about the hearing and seeing. How are we doing, people? 5x5. Thank you, Scott. Great. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Well, welcome. We're a couple minutes early. We'll wait for other people to get here. Let me thank some people while I'm here. So Shenanigans showed up, but then she has to leave us. Shenanigans, we understand that. Listen, people are extremely important, and we take care of each other. That's extremely important. So I understand. Scott Hummer, so great. Thank you. Thank you for picking up Locker 9. What a great book. You're right. It's one of those you just can't put down. Of course, the other one is right here, volume 2 in that series, Grace Under Fire. And we'll be talking about that one at the end of the month. And we kind of get an introduction to, what's his name? I see him as a Mad Max type of a character, but then he really gets introduced in volume 3, and then there's an offshoot series on him as well. Yeah, fantastic. Blue Dawn, let me tell you, do you think like I do that Blue Dawn is a 2025 version of 1984? I mean, when I read Blue Dawn, I'm seeing the politicians that he's describing as far as this chaos that's going on and how they're usurping the country. Let me know. Do you see it the same way I do? Do you see that as an Orson Welles type of a book for our generation? Prepper for the Agents, good evening. Welcome. Good to see you. A bear. Wow. I don't blame you. Yeah, I'd be on my toes for that. Welcome. But yeah, pay attention to what's going on around you. Suzanne Goulet, good evening. Thank you for being here. Let me see who else. Siggy Homestead, good evening. Welcome. Utah Mike and Scott Hummer, I already said. Phaoxerus, there's another good one. Thank you for being here, Phaoxerus. Kaylin Strain. And let me see, anybody else? Little Lone Prepper, another good one. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. So I've got 8 o'clock now. Just a real, gosh, he does such a good job of covering so much in such a little bit of time. So I want to recommend my good friend John Grammer has been putting out, he and his wife have been putting out a series of videos on nuclear. And I strongly recommend that you watch those. They're learning as they go. They're doing a phenomenal job of learning and presenting great information in their short videos. Strongly recommend, and it's Salt Creek Living, I believe, is the name of his channel. Let me get here. Well, Salt Creek Living is the name of that. So I would strongly recommend you subscribe to that and watch what John and Terry are putting out. That's really good information. Where's my book? Here it is. So I have a little bit of show and tell. A lot of the stuff I've got the stuff that I recommend in the show notes. So if you want to have the same setup that I have, the links to what I have are in the notes, and you can get the exact same thing. So chapter 9, nuclear war survival. So he bases it on a couple things. 3 different nuclear war scenarios exist. Number 1 is a limited nuclear exchange. Number 2 is a nuclear exchange limited to nuclear targets only. And number 3 is kind of a tit-for-tat retaliation type of a thing. You know, you hit us, we'll hit you back. If you have one miss, then we'll have one purposefully miss, you know, and all that kinds of things. But anyhow, it's just crazy. One of the things I really, really admire about Mr. Jones is that his assumptions and my assumptions run very, very parallel. I think in his mind, he sees it as primarily being an airburst versus airburst conflicts. Basically what we did to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Remember that with an there's 4 different types of bursts that you can have with a nuclear projectile. So the first one's a high altitude burst. And when you do a high altitude burst, that is primarily for the electromagnetic pulse that's going to come out and basically wipe out any long wire things. We believe that there may be some short wire things, some of the things in your cell phones and things like that. It may work. What we do know for sure is that the longer the metallic object, the more susceptible it is to receiving an EMP. So, just imagine any electrical wires that are long exposed, like telephone wires, power wires, all those different transmission wires. Those are definitely going to be exposed. As far as the shielding, metallic cars are going to be a conductor. They're going to be an antenna for the EMP, and they conduct that down into your microchip. So there's going to be this burst of energy that's going to fry everything. So that's the extremely high, the high altitude burst, okay? Then you have an air burst. Now an air burst is maximizing the blast effect of that thermonuclear device, atomic weapon, H-bomb, whatever you want to call it. It's maximizing the blast effect. So you're using it just like a conventional bomb, but with thousands times more explosive power than would a regular bomb be. So that's basically what we did to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We used the explosive blast effect to its maximum potential. The next one is a surface burst. So a surface burst is only going to have about 75% of the destructive power as if it had been an air burst, okay? So you're limiting the destructive power by the burst itself. So, but what you're doing is anytime you have that fireball where the nuclear burst happens and touches the ground, the ground then becomes irradiated. So it then takes that ground and now it's superheated, and because it's superheated, it becomes lighter than air and it goes up like a hot air balloon up into the air, and then it flows with the major winds, which is why I tell you check out windy.com. What are the prevailing wind patterns for that day in your area? And as it cools, it will drop down into you, and that's where it's called fallout. Oh my gosh, looky here. We have Triple G Farms, welcome. And we have, let me see, who else? I thought I saw, and Patty's Garden. Good evening, Patty. Good to see you as well. Sumi, welcome. No, you're fine. You're fine. We haven't gotten that far into it. And okay, there we are. God, we've got some more great people. Thank you for being here. So we've gone through the extremely high altitude burst, the air burst. Now we go to the surface burst. It's going to only have about 75 to 85% of the explosive power of an air burst. However, it produces the fallout. So as it produces the fallout, that's the radioactive particles that are going to be taken up into that mushroom cloud. They get dispensed by the prevailing wind currents, and as they cool over time, they fall back to Earth. So now you have irradiated particles falling back to Earth. That's the fallout you have to protect yourself against. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we get further into this chapter. The fourth type is a subsurface burst. That's what they're going to primarily try to do against our silos, some of our command and control bunkers, where they're going to move all the government officials to, Cheyenne Mountain, and other places like that. So, Camp David, the old Biltmore, I forget what that's called, Raven Rock, and Cheyenne Mountain are the ones that they're probably going to use subsurface bursts on, along with all of the subsurface ICBM silos that we have. Now, in my opinion, if I were a Soviet targeting guy, I would not target our ICBM sites, simply because, there's going to be a half hour that it takes. We're going to detect them. Now we even do it quicker. It used to be over the horizon radar. Now we have satellites that are going to do that. We'll get a notification of a launch within 5 seconds of the time that you have the heat signature of that rocket launching it out of its launch pad. So we're going to have, half-hour advance notice. We won't have that much of an advance notice against any of their submarine-launched ballistic missiles. That may be, if it's going to the shoreline, as little as 4 to 5 minutes. To central part of the United States, maybe as much as 12 to 15 minutes. But I mean, it drastically reduces the overall amount of time we have as far as early warning. Now, the one that really scares me is this new one called the Club K. So the Club K, those trailers that you see behind the semi-trucks on the road that were basically a shipping container, and then they move it off the boat onto a truck, and that's a 54-foot trailer, a 54-foot shipping container box. So what the Russians have done, and the Chinese, is they have designed a launch system so that a short-range or intermediate-range ballistic missile can be launched from one of those shipping containers. So all that means now is if the Russians or the Chinese take those shipping containers and put them on top of a stack of other shipping containers, any commercial ship now becomes a launch vessel for their short-range or intermediate-range ballistic missiles. That's what's scary to me, is we don't know they're there. There could be one sitting in Houston Harbor right now. There could be one sitting in Los Angeles, one sitting in San Diego, New York, New Jersey. Any of those major ports could have a Club K rocket launcher right there in that on a commercial ship, and that is scary. Exactly, Theoxerus. So look at where our silos are, and then use Windy to find out whether you're downwind from that silo. Brilliant. Absolutely. I like that idea. Oh, no, Holly, I'm sorry to hear that. Yes, please do. But the whole thing, Theoxerus, and you could be right. I'm not going to argue. You could be right, but then they're aiming. They're using what they could use against other targets, against hollow things that they assume may or may not have anything in them. So as a targeter, I wouldn't like to play those odds. Remember, if it's a U.S. versus Russia, they've got us outnumbered in warheads. But if it's if it's a Russia versus NATO, now all of a sudden there's a lot more parity. And a lot of those secondary targets that they would have shot against here in the United States are going to be developed against the NATO countries. And now that we have more NATO countries, that consumes more of their available warheads that have to be used against them instead of against us. So, you have to start really thinking about what priorities you're going to take as far as, what you're going to target. So then it talks about blast zone survival, the flash, the heat, and the blast and debris, and then the back blast. I think a lot of people forget about the back blast. Remember that what you're doing is it's the same thing as a tsunami. If you've ever watched a tsunami, when you have the water recede away from the coastline, okay, then all of a sudden it comes back in a flood, right? And so that flood is going to occupy that vacated space. The same thing with a nuclear blast. You've got this horrific amount of force that's coming at this object and going to blow it over, okay? But then again, you've created a vacuum. So now it's going to search the entire surrounding area for anything that's available, air, to come back in and fill that vacuum because it's pushed everything out. So that backblast is just as devastating as the original blast. So you've got two waves, one going away and one coming back towards you. No, Pete, I don't. I don't see Goodfellow being a target at all. And I'll get into that a little bit more here in just a second. But good question, but I don't think it's a target at all. You're right, Theoxerus. And so I spent 21 years studying how the Russians think and how they target and how they fight. As a matter of fact, I helped write FM 21-125, which is how the Russians write. And this was back in 1980, but I was one of the authors of FM 21-125, which is how the Russians fight. So yeah, I've got a little bit of experience. I know how the Russians think. Now, of course, recently, if you take a look at it, tell me the difference between how they're fighting in Ukraine and how they fought on the Western Front, whether that be the Kharkiv front, whether it be the Stalingrad front, whether it be the St. Petersburg, then it was called Leningrad, the Moscow front, all those fronts, it's the same thing. They always use mass conflict as far as human beings. And that's the whole reason they were fighting against the Tsar in October 1917. Remember, the Great October Revolution was because the Tsar had rifles for the front file of soldiers, and they would, putting them up against the Germans in World War I, and you were waiting for the guy in front of you to die so you could pick up his rifle and fight against him. The same thing, human wave tactics in World War II. They're doing kind of the same thing now. They just send in troops and troops and troops. Look what they've done to the North Koreans. Their tactics may have evolved with the technology, but their overall basic tactics are still the same. They're just suicidal waves. It's unbelievable. And then you got fire, collapse, and chaos. There is a fantastic, wonderful chart at the bottom of page 58 that shows you the overall damage effects of an air burst versus a surface burst and the radius from that burst in miles. You can do the same thing if you go to nuclearsecrecy.com, Alex Wellerstein's website. I'll put a link to it. I think the name is Nuke Secrecy is what the website name is. But you can do projections basically of what's going to happen in your area. Please do not use it, Tsar Bomba. Remember that any bomb has to be carried by a physical aircraft, not by a missile, and those probably will not make it across the Atlantic or Pacific Oceans. Fort Worth Naval Air Station, Scott, is not, in my opinion, a major target. I mean, what can they do? You've got fighters. The only thing the fighters can do is take down bombers, and against an ICBM, that's not going to be a target. To be honest with you, there's a lot of misperception out there about what will be and what won't be target. I don't even. If I were a Soviet target, I'm sorry, I keep saying Soviet because that's who I worked against for 21 years. If I were a Russian targeter, Fort Hood wouldn't even be a target. I mean, those tanks, right, at Fort Hood are worthless in a strategic war. They've got to be moved to Europe to be a threat against Russia. So, trying to nuke them while they're sitting on the ground in Fort Hood doesn't do you any good. They're stuck there. If you take out a port, you can't move them. If you take out an airport, you can't move them. So I think that it would be more beneficial to them to take out the ports, take out the aircraft facilities. So then you've got static tanks that can't do any good, and nobody's going to try to come occupy us. It's not going to be a kinetic war. So I don't think that even Fort Hood would be a target. A National Guard armory, reserve, barracks, no, they aren't going to be targets. They're going to go for other things. They'll go for different things than that. Here it shows the effect. This is a fantastic chart. It shows the effect of an air burst or a ground burst versus an air burst. Notice how how it expands as far as distance, as far as the blast effect. Same warhead has more damage further out in the blast than does a surface burst. So Barney's Mountain Dog, that you're supporting what I said at the very beginning, that basically EMP is going to be more attracted to what we might call long wire antennas, same as a CME. So there is, and I forget his name, gosh doggone, he is the EMP expert for NASA. He's written some science fiction books around an EMP after effect. But anyhow, and he, I think his YouTube name is Nuke Doctor or EMP Doctor, and he agrees. He says that he thinks that the vast majority of vehicles and everything else will work after an EMP. It's primarily going to be the power stations, power transmission lines, and things like that that are going to be more affected than anything else. So thank you. Yeah, you and he and I and a couple others are in agreement there. So what can I do to survive? Well, when I was a kid in school, they had us go into the center hallway of the school and sit down on the ground and in an Indian style and bring our knees up and protect our ears and hold our hands over the back of our head. And that's what we did. So basically what you want to do is evaluate where the nukes might hit and just not be in an area around there, immediately around there. He talks about different things that you can do to protect yourself, shield yourself. So different barriers and their protective values and that make for fantastic protection. I think it was 1977. Let me check and see what the publication date of this was. I was at Fuel Station Augsburg, and I bought this book, 1980. So it was right before I left Fuel Station Augsburg in Germany. I bought this book. And take a look at the price. Can you believe that? $9.95. So this was 1980, probably the best nuclear war book there was on all the things, alpha, beta, gamma, all the different rules, all the different ways to build protection against it. Right at the beginning of the Ukraine war, they came out and redid it. So this is the 2022 edition. This is $20 more. So this one was $9.95 when I bought it, and this one's $29.95 on Amazon. So, but great book. It's updated for the Ukraine conflict. It's got a lot of great information on it. I think it's page 6-1 in this book. Let me see if I can find it. Or paragraph 6-1. No, it's not. I thought I had it memorized. But it's about water. And one of the things that they found was that you can reduce the best, 95% of the radiation out of surface water simply by filtering it with at least an N95 type filtration system. So you could use even clothing, a cotton T-shirt, and that's going to remove the greatest amount of nuclear radiation from your contaminated drinking water. So that's kind of it. EMP doctor, thank you. Great. Thank you, Little Known Prepper. I greatly appreciate that. Gosh, you guys are so cooperative. Joe, good evening. And oh, McGuire Air Force Base. Well, here's something for you. In the military, in the Army at least, everybody, and this was back in the days when you had 2 divisions plus a regiment plus a brigade, and plus you had a corps headquarters, 3 corps headquarters. We're all at Fort Hood. So up until the time, I'm going to say 1995, everybody served 1 tour at Fort Hood. Everybody in the military on a career. I was assigned there twice and never stepped foot on it. So the first time I was assigned there, I was assigned to the 303rd ASA Battalion, and that's this patch up here. And then I don't have my hat with me. I'll show you the crest. But I was assigned to the 303rd ASA Battalion, Fort Hood, Texas, with duty at NSA, National Security Agency, Fort Meade, Maryland. So I was assigned to Fort Hood, but actually did my duty at Fort Meade. Then in 1977, ASA and MI merged, and they became INSCOM, the Intelligence and Security Command, and I was assigned to the 303rd MI Battalion, Fort Hood, Texas, with duty at Goodfellow Air Force Base, which is this one and this one. So I spent 6 years assigned to Fort Hood and never stepped foot on it. So, we kind of have our little things, right? Okay, where was I? Let me get back to my notes, my book. Okay. So there are some great things I want to show you here in just a second. Okay, so fallout survival and everything else. So the first thing we have to understand is concentration. I want to share screen. There we go. And I want to do, okay, so here is, and it's not a map per se. It's a kind of a list of things that you might want to see. So for example, it lists here Ellsworth, Minot, and Barksdale. I would add to that Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, which is the headquarters for the B-2s, and Dyess Air Force Base in Abilene, Texas, which is where we have our B-1s. And then Minot, of course, is the home of the B-52s. Let me get here and see if I can't get this scrolled down for you. They're going to take out some of our larger population centers and urban areas just for the terroristic effect. It's going to take 5 nukes just to take out Manhattan. So, think about how many it's going to take for Manhattan. That's a very population dense area in the fact that everything's built up. Think of that. Now, if it takes 5 for Manhattan, think of what it's going to have for Los Angeles. Yeah, it's only half the people, but it's spread out. I mean, it's not built up as high as much as it is spread out. Chicago's kind of in between. It's in the downtown area, it's very high, but in the rural areas, it's very spread out as well. So, Chicago, maybe another 3 to 5, Los Angeles, 5 to 7. So we're talking about how many warheads it's going to take for those targets to wipe them out. Whereas they may want to just do a terroristic type of a thing. So some of the other things that they're going to be looking at would be our command and control centers, our communication centers, diplomatic and political centers. There's communications hubs, transportation hubs. Remember, for example, and I think it's pronounced Salina, Kansas. When I was at Fort Riley with the 1st Infantry Division back in the early 70s, 74 through 77, Fort Riley was what they called the Reforger unit. And so that was redeployment of forces to Germany. So they had what they called POMCUS, the pre-configured on-site unit configurations or configuration of unit sets. And so they had an entire unit's worth of equipment in a warehouse. So all they had to do was fly the troops over. They would go to Fenari Barracks or Coleman Barracks, and they would pick up their equipment, and then we could fight a war. That's how we got the entire 1st Infantry Division on the battle line in Germany within 72 hours of notice. So that's an entire division. But the runway at Fort Riley was not long enough for C-141s or C-5s at that time. Now the C-17s and others. But we had to go to Salina, Kansas. So that was an hour convoy to get to Salina to get onto an airplane so we could be flown over to Ramstein Air Base or to Frankfurt, either one. So if you take out that runway at Salina, the 1st Infantry Division can't go anywhere. It's going to have to go somewhere further away to get to an airport that can handle those aircraft. Now, Fort Hood's slightly different. West Fort Hood, the runway at West Fort Hood is long enough to support a C-5 Galaxy. So that's just some of the things you have to consideration. So one of the things we found out in Germany, we kept bombing these factories, and we did it in Norway, but we never figured it out and did it in Germany during World War II, was in Norway, we took out their power production capabilities. In Germany, we didn't do that. We kept going for the factories. Now, if we just blew one power plant, then that would have taken out several of their manufacturing capabilities. So power plants, power hubs. Supposedly, if you take out 7 to 9 of our distribution centers, power distribution center substations in the United States, you take down the whole grid, I would go for those if I were a nuclear planner. Thank you, Pete. I appreciate that. So, think about how can they really disable us and without wasting anything on anybody else. Scott was born in, Scott, am I pronouncing it right? Do they say Salina or do they say Salina? I think it's Salinas, Kansas. I'm sorry, Salinas, California, and Salina, Kansas. I think that's right. No, Laura, that was not from John Grammer's website. Okay, so the next one is now, and this was one that John Grammer and his wife Terry were explaining on one of their shorts here a little while ago. I've got a graphic that I want to show you. There's 2 things to take into consideration. Number 1 is the concentration of electromagnetic or radiation, okay? Remember, think of it like a water spigot, okay? So I've got this thing on my hose that showers water. So if I'm up close to you, you're going to get drenched with water, whereas if I get further away, those little rays of water, you don't get hit with as many, so you're not going to get as wet as quickly as you would if we were standing closer. So that's what we call the law of inverse squares, okay? So if you're standing 1 foot away from me and you get this amount of water, okay, and then when you get 2 feet away from me, you take that 2, okay, so you're now more than 1. You're going to put it underneath, so you're not going to get 1/2 of the radiation that you would have at 1. You're going to get 1/4. So you do 1/2, but the 2 is squared. So now if you go out 3 feet, you're only going to get 1/3 squared, or 1/9 of the concentration of water, okay? So that's the law of inverse squares. So let me show you that one. If I can find it here in my, there we go, inverse squares. So look at this neat little graphic over here. So what you've got is it's showing how that concentration, as you're up close, look at all those beams hitting right here on that sheet of paper. Now, as you move further away, you're 2 distances away instead of 1. So now you're going to be 1/2 squared, or 1/4. So you got 4 little panels. So now you're only getting 1/4 of the radiation. And then as you move out to a distance of 3, you're 1/3 squared, or 1/9. So you've got all that same stuff you received in this one is now hitting 9. So you're only receiving 1/9 of the radiation that you would have had you been closer. So the further away you are from then the lesser the chance that you're going to be exposed to radiation, okay? So that's the law of inverse squares. So remember the 3 things you have going for you: time, distance, and shielding, okay? So that distance, we do the law of inverse squares. You're only going to get 1/whatever of the radiation you would if you're closer. Now let's take a look at time. Time is called the 7-10 rule, okay? So let me get that called up for you here. Okay, so this figure, this graph on the left, shows the law of 7-10, okay? So at 7 hours after the explosion, that radioactivity is only going to have 1/10 of the value because of the radioactive half-life that it had before. Now, if we multiply that by another factor of 7, so after 7 hours times 7 is 49 hours, then there's only going to be 1/10 of this radiation left. So now you're at basically 1%. So if you take that 49 hours and multiply it times 7, which is basically 2 weeks, which is what we said back during the Cold War, that's how long you had to stay in your shelter before you could come out and be exposed. So now we're at 1/100th, okay? So we had here, this is 1/10. You're only 90% of the radiation has died away. Only 1/10 remains. Here, only 1/100th remains. At the end of 2 weeks, or 49 hours times 7, then you only have 1% of the radiation left. Now you take those 2 weeks times 7, 14 weeks, and now we're down to 1/10,000th of the radiation is left. So it keeps on doing this 7-10 rule. Every 7 hours, it reduces down to 1/10 of the level of radiation it was prior to that, okay? Does that make sense? Let me see if I can get back here and see if there's any questions about those. All right, so it looks like everybody got those. That's great. Those can be kind of confusing. So remember, the first one is your distance. You're going to have less and less concentration of the radioactive effects. And then time, you're going to have less and less radioactivity because of the half-life dying effect. So those 2 things protect you. Now we talk about shielding. So if you can get something between you and the source of radioactivity, the better off you are, because you want that barrier to absorb the radioactivity as it's coming towards you instead of your body absorbing it. Now, alpha and beta waves, okay, alpha and beta radiation. Alpha and beta are both blocked by your skin or your clothing. So you don't have to worry about it. It's not going to be that much. However, if you open your mouth to it and it gets inside your body, okay, or you drink water that has alpha beta in it, then yes, once it's inside your body, it can be a contaminant, okay? Gamma, however, is like X-ray. It goes through you, and it does all kinds of damage as it goes through you. You want something very densely packed to stop the radiation before it gets to you. So what we can do is we can keep the radioactive fallout. Remember, these are the little particles that were in that, when the ball touched the Earth, it irradiated the Earth, superheated it, threw it up into the air. Now it's cooling and falling back down to Earth. It looks just like snow, or it looks like dust, okay, is what it's going to look like. You want to keep that from getting inside your body or on your body. So it's my short number 19. I did it 2 years ago. Let me show you this. I did the wrong one. So, let me go ahead and start it here for you, see if I can. No, it's not going to let me. But anyhow, what I've done is I've shown you how you can take a $1 poncho, a pair of nitrile gloves, a bandana, goggles, an N95 mask, some painter's booties, and create what I call a personal protective kit, a personal protection kit. So you put all that on, and it keeps the radioactive fallout from coming in contact with your skin. And that way you can have a decontamination area when you get home. You want something that's easy to remove. Please don't get a painter's suit. If you get a painter's suit, they're easy to put on, and it's a fantastic thing for protecting you, but you can't get it off without exposing yourself to radiation. The nice thing about these $1 Walmart plastic emergency raincoats, or a rain poncho, is you can take a pocket knife, okay, so you cut right here, and then that hood falls apart. You want to keep your goggles and your mask on at all times. Then after that's done, then you reach on the inside, take your knife and cut it from the inside out, and that poncho is going to fall away from you, and all of the radioactive contaminants are going to fall away from you with that poncho, okay? Now you can cut off your booties. Now you can take off your mask and your face mask and your goggles and your gloves, okay? Then you want to get rid of any clothes that you have on you. Then you want to just shower. Just rinse. Do not scrub. Do not wash. Just rinse. You just want to rinse the stuff off from you. So what I've done is I've created a decontamination area, and I have one of these kits in each seat of both vehicles, my pickup and the wife's car. But then I have a hanging camp shower in the backyard. I have a 55-gallon or 35-gallon. I have a 35-gallon trash can that we're going to put all of our contaminated stuff in. It's going to be away from the house, and then we can naked on the back porch, and it's completely enclosed with plastic tarps so that we can avoid having anything else brought in. Then you can take a naked shower on the back porch, get all that contaminant washed off of you, and then come inside the house, dry off inside the house, put on clean clothes, and you should be pretty much radioactive free. But that's the kind of stuff you want to think about, is how are you going to get that stuff off? You definitely don't want to bring any of it into your house. Please do not bring any kind of contaminant inside your house, okay? Get rid of it outside. If it means you just have to strip down outside, even without even taking a shower, do that. Come inside, go immediately to wherever you're going to do your shower, and rinse off. Just rinse it off with cool water. Don't use hot water. Cool water, the pores stay closed. With hot water, your pores open up. Remember, your sweat pores are going to open up, and that's going to allow your body to absorb the radioactive fallout dust. You don't want to do that. Cold water shower to basically rinse it off. Okay, let me check here. Will the contamination in dirt, yes, it will, little on prepper. Good question. So that radioactivity, every radioactive element has what they call a radioactive half-life. So strontium, for example, may have a half-life of only hours, whereas there's another one, strontium 235, something like that. I forget what they are. I'm not a chemist. But that one may have a half-life of a year. So what that means is that that's going to be very radioactive for 1 year. Then in 1 year, it's only 50%. And then it takes another year to get down to 25% because it's going to be 50% of the 50%. So it lasts for a long, long time. So what you want to do is you want to find out the radio half-life of the agents that are being used. Most of them are very short life radioactive. If you use the 2-week down to 1/1000th of its original potency, you are very, very close to being fairly accurate. Let me see. Holly Ivans, yes, we should pretty much be about 72 hours would be good. Definitely that 49 hours, you're at 1% of the radioactivity you had before. So then you at 2 weeks, you're at 1/1000th of what it was before. Somebody just said it. Pete says he plans to stay inside for 4 days. Great plan. Great plan. And then Holly Ivan says, do not answer your door after it happens. Absolutely correct. Once you have everybody inside your shelter that you intend to have there, it's sealed. Nobody else comes in. There is a fantastic, outstanding, superior Twilight Zone movie, and I think it's called The Bunker, I think it's called The Bunker. But it's families these guys are making fun of this family at a dinner. They're having a dinner, and they're making fun of them because they spent all this money to build a bomb shelter in their basement, the fallout shelter. And all of a sudden, the sirens sound. So they go downstairs into their bunker, and everybody else is laughing and saying, "That's just make believe." And all of a sudden, they see a flash, and or something happens, and they all want to get in that bunker now. So they come down there yelling through the doors. They're going to kill them. They're going to burn the house. They're going to do everything. They want to get inside that bunker. Then they find out it was just a test. But oh, what a great movie! Yes, that's exactly what's going to happen. If people think you're a prepper and that you have a way to survive the fallout, they're going to want to be with you. Lock the doors. Nobody else comes in. That's all there is to it. Yeah, Holly, I'm with you. I'm going to wait the 2 weeks. Joe, I do too. Here in Central Texas, a basement is something that is extremely expensive because we've got all this rock. I probably have an inch at the max of topsoil here before I get down into rock. This used to be a long time ago, basically part of a floodwater basin. So, we just don't have underground things here in Central Texas. Now, what I will tell you, when I lived in El Paso, what got me into prepping was my next door neighbor, Lloyd, was the neighborhood civil defense warden. And he built a fallout shelter out of cinder block in his backyard. So in El Paso, especially because at that time it was a B-52 base, we figured that we were a target. Biggs Air Force Base was still there. Now it's Biggs Army Air Base. But Biggs Air Force Base was a B-36, and then it was a B-52 base. And they used to drill and take off right over our house all the time. But we had cinder block fallout shelters, and that's back when we didn't have solar power. To operate the air induction system through the air filtration system, you had hand cranks. That was a generator attached to a battery, and the battery provided the electrical power. Everything was 12 volt. We had Christmas tree lights on the inside, basically. We didn't have great survival food, Spam and lifeboat rations and things like that. But it was quite different back in the 60s than it is now as far as being able to prepare for nuclear fallout. I would consider, if you're here where we can't dig, consider a cinder block fallout shelter. Yeah, that will do you a lot of good. Okay. Continuing on here. Gosh, this is a great book. I tell you, this is a great book. So he talks about personal fallout and decontamination. he shows you a picture basically of a poncho type system versus a Tyvek or Tyvek system. I have a problem with the Tyvek systems. That's what we used in the military, our MOP, military-oriented protection posture, but we also had decontamination equipment. So I would walk into a decontamination site with my mask on, hood, gloves, boots, everything, and they had these special chemicals and a high-pressure hose, and they would hose me off and get all the fallout off of my suit. And then they also had these brushes that they would brush off any residuals, special brushes. And then I would go into a decontamination tent and I would remove it there and then remove my clothes and get a fresh new uniform. But we had everything provisioned for that Tyvek suit. If you don't have a way to get it off, don't put it on. You can do just as much damage, if not more so, if you don't know how to doff it as you did donning it. Okay, donning means to put on and doff means to take off. By the way, there is a special way, and you can take a look at it. Take a look at nurse doffing gloves. Do a YouTube video search, nurse doffing gloves. So basically what you do is you have your gloves on, and this is what they teach you in first aid, in nursing and all that kinds of stuff. You're going to take one hand, you're going to take the outside of a glove, and you're going to pinch it. And so now your contaminated glove is touching the outside contaminated area here. You're going to pull it up over your fingers, okay? So that at no time does the exterior of that glove come in contact with your skin. You're pulling it off, you're grabbing it here and pulling it off, okay? Once you've got it off, okay, this hand is clean. Now you're going to take that and roll it into a ball in this hand. Then you're going to take your finger and slide it underneath the glove on this side, okay, and then take this one off from the outside. Only you're not going to do it holding up because everything would fall down. You're going to hold it down so that everything falls below you, but I'm showing you this way, upside down, just so you get the idea. Take your finger inside, and you're going to push it off, and then it's going to come off your hand, okay? It'll come off your hand and off your fingers. And then the contaminated part is on the on the inside of that glove now, because you kind of turned it inside out, and then you can handle that inside, the clean inside, and throw that away, okay? So that's called doffing gloves, and you can take a look at that on any YouTube channel that deals with nursing or medical care or something like that. Sue, how was that? Was that a halfway decent explanation? Sue's a nurse, so she can tell you whether or not I got that on. So Scott was on the decontamination team when the F-4s would come back from bombing runs and exercises. Absolutely. Same thing. They had high pressure hoses. They had big tanker trucks with these decontamination chemicals in them that they would spray on the trucks, or on the planes, I'm sorry. So best places to be, and how you can use materials, like in my house, okay? What are the materials like this heavy oak German dining table that I'm on? The wood here is actually 2 inches thick. This is 2-inch thick wood. So, but it's very heavy. So can I take other things that are going to be further barrier to keep that radioactivity from hitting me, like putting books or metal objects or something like that on top of this, creating another barrier? Can I put more barriers here on this bench so that it causes it so that anything underneath this table won't be hit by the gamma radiation? Now, I've shown you several times, it's right over there, my GQ Electronics Geiger counter. Make sure you get a Geiger counter of some sort. I keep these two over here. So this is my, so in my house, I have a smoke detector over there. Then this is a carbon monoxide detector. Remember that carbon monoxide is heavier than air. So it's going to fill up from the bottom up. So right now I have 0 carbon monoxide at waist level in my house, which is good. That means that the air where I am is safe to breathe. But then I also have a GQ Electronics Geiger counter, okay? And I keep this charged right here so that if there's a blast, I can use it. I have another Geiger counter that I keep in my Faraday bag, and that's in my center room here in the house. But both of those, if you want either one or both of the Geiger counters that I use, I put those links in the show notes. You can get them less than $100 each. I think I've shown you, I meant to get it out because I have some extras over there. But then Helen and I both keep our rad triage dosimeters in our wallets. So basically, this is a small card, and as it gets exposed to radiation, these will change colors. So as it changes colors, it shows you the total amount of radiation you have absorbed. So think of the Geiger counter as being a speedometer telling you how fast the radiation is coming. Think of your dosimeter as being the odometer, how many miles you've traveled or how much radiation you have absorbed. So that's the difference between the two. One of them measures how fast you're accumulating it. The other measures the total accumulation. Now, the reason I bring that up right now is because on page 67, he has a superior chart, once again, that says, what is the dosage of accumulated radiation that you have on your dosimeter, and then what are the effects? So it doesn't really start getting that serious until you get up to about 400, 500. So at 400 rads, total acute dose, vomiting and nausea will affect all exposed personnel within the first day after exposure. Severe symptoms of radiation sickness will last for months, and 50% of the exposed personnel will die. So if you've got 400 rads of radiation exposure, there's a 50% chance you'll live, 50% chance you'll die. At 270 to 330, you've got an 80% chance of survival, and that will be within the first 2 to 6 weeks that you do pass away, if anything. At 180 to 220, they don't anticipate any deaths, okay? So once you get the 220 on your RAD card, on your dosimeter card, do everything you can to not get exposed to anything else, okay? Because you're at your upper limit of what you can do so safely. Now remember that radiation in your body has a half-life. So as you stay away from radiation, it's going to die. That's going to be your rule of 7/10, okay? So if I have 100 rads in my body right now, and I stay away from any source of adding more to it, 7 hours from now, I'm only going to have 1/10 of that left in my body. So 7 hours after getting a 100 rad dose, I will be down to where I only have 10 rads in my body. So it will have a kind of dissipated, died away from the half-life, okay? Now, that does not mean that if I get re-exposed, so if I had 100, okay, and after 7 hours I'm down to 10, okay, but I get re-exposed to another 100, that new 100 is on a different lifespan than the original 100 that I had. So now I have 110. So 7 hours afterwards, this will be down to 10. This 10 has got to be a factor of 7. So it's not going to be down to 1/10 of 1/10 until 49 hours away. So don't go out and re-expose yourself thinking that, well, the rule of 7/10 says that it's going to die. Be careful. You can overcomplicate things, and you probably may not have the math to where you're going to really want to keep up with it. Okay, let me see where we are. And then, so he's got the radioactive decay and the rule of 7/10 here in his book. And then he's got a whole list of radiation detection instruments and KiO3 or Ki, potassium iodide. If you're below 65, get some. I've got a link in the show notes where you can get some from Amazon if you want to. If you're over 60, don't worry about it. Okay, it only protects your thyroid. Then he has a whole list of fallout shelter supplies. One thing I got to say I really, really love about Mr. Jones is in his book, he says don't plan on 1 gallon water per day per person. Count on 3.5 gallons of water per person per day. And I wholeheartedly support that. Because remember, as you get more and more freeze-dried or dehydrated things, you're going to have to rehydrate those. You're going to want to have, besides drinking water, I think the 1 gallon per person per day is just for drinking water. It does not include cooking, cleaning, rehydration, possibly flushing of toilets or anything like that. So I like his idea, 3.5 gallons per person per day, a lot better. Let me get up and catch up with your show notes or with your comments, and we'll see what we do. I don't understand your question, Utah Mike. Okay, Suzanne Goulet found a great video on donning and doffing gloves and protective equipment. Let me see. So let me see if I think what percentage do you feel nuke prep will be used? So what is the percentage of people I think are preparing for a nuke? I would say probably less than 1%. If that's what I think you're asking, maybe you can clarify that for me. Holly Ivans, great point. Don't forget to include duct tape and plastic. You want to seal off anywhere that dust can come into your house. So sealing off your windows, sealing off your air conditioner or heater ducts or anything like that. Anywhere where the radioactive fallout can be blown into your house. Make sure you have some sort of sealing material. Now that sealing material could just be caulk, it could be rubber, it could be rolled up towels, but you want to make sure you have the crevices around your doors covered as well. So that's another place you might want to use duct tape. Anything you can, all those areas, seal those off so you get minimum amount of intrusion into your area. But also be careful, be cautious. Remember that if you seal up your home really well, then what you have in your house is the only oxygen you have to breathe. So take a look at the areas where you're going to get the more susceptible area of blowing in of dust and things like that. Seal that off, but leave a little bit of room where you can get in some filtered air of some sort and protect yourself that way. Make sure you have some air to breathe as well. Oh, okay. So I did misunderstood that. So Pete's answering. There's a 2% chance that you'd use any nuke preps, but that's enough. Yeah. So there's a formula they use, and it's the likelihood times the severity times. I forget what the third one is, but when you use that formula, then preparing for a nuclear war comes up pretty high. That people should do it because it's one of those that if you don't, it's existential. And we've been on the Dr. Carl Sagan's watch or clock or whatever. Nuclear midnight. We've been closer and closer to it all the time. I'm not as afraid of Russia and China as I am of Iran and North Korea. And, North Korea, you have to realize, we went across their country 3 times in the Korean War, the Korean conflict, and just leveled everything there. There was nothing left. And and they blame that on us. And so, and probably there's some rightfulness to that. Of course, the Iranians think of us as the big Satan. So, well, the big Satan and the little Satan, Israel and the United States. And I'm not sure which is which, but they want to eradicate both of us. And they've been on that bench for quite a while. And they can use some puppet states to do that. Now, one of the things that we haven't talked about here, we've talked about nuclear warfare. We haven't talked about radiation or radioactive. So imagine what would happen. Do you remember the Oklahoma City bombing back in the early 90s where they took some fertilizer in a truck and blew it up outside the Edward Murrow building in Oklahoma City, the FBI office, and it basically took off about 1/3 of the front of that building. Imagine what would happen if he took some nuclear waste. So somebody found the pond where the spent rods are for a nuclear power plant, or radioactive fallout, or medicinal fallout, radiation. But all these different kinds of radiation that exist around the United States, they're just readily available. And they took that and they packed it around an explosive device. So now they're taking this low yield radioactive material, and when it blows, it's not causing the explosion, it's not irradiating anything else. It's just using the explosion to throw that radioactive material out to a greater distance, so that now you're throwing all these radioactive things out into the society. I would say probably maybe 3 blocks you might be able to get with this is called a dirty bomb. So you might reach a maximum of about 3 blocks, but that area is going to have all this low-grade radiation there for quite a while. So it's not the same as a nuclear bomb. It's a lot easier to control as far as the area. You're not going to worry about fallout. You're not going to worry about anything becoming irradiated. You're just worried about the fact that you've got this fissile material that has been thrown out all over the place. Okay, so that's something else you kind of have to be aware of. Joe, you are absolutely right. We are so thankful here in the greater Austin area. We've only had 2 days over 100, and we typically over a summer here in this area average over 90 days over 100. So we are very thankful we're getting close to that time. Usually August, September are going to be the hottest, up through mid-September. But we're definitely not going to be up in the 90 days over triple digits this year. We may get up to 60 at a max, maybe 45, but maybe even 30 max. But we've been very, very lucky with temperatures this year. But yeah, our air conditioner is running all the time. Let me see. Oh, Laura, great idea. Make sure you also do the door locks. That's another intrusion area. Great idea. You guys, Holly, in Jersey tonight, you're supposed to be eating the outer bands of Hurricane Erin. I think that started earlier today, but even though it's going to hit east of the coast, from what I understand, you're going to get some of the outer bands, which will be cooler and wetter than normal. Thank you, Pete. Yes, there. I do have some equipment and the books. I have this book that I strongly recommend. Oh, no, I don't. That's the old one. I'm sorry. I have the newer one. I have this book in the list down below. And then I have this book, which is just, let me tell you, I'm glad I picked this book. Mr. Jones did a very good job. He covers a lot of great stuff, a lot of great information. He condenses a lot of information from here into one short chapter here. Get this, then it should drive your interest to get more detailed information out of the other books that go there. But thank you for mentioning that, Pete. I've also got a link to that video number 19, which was my personal protective equipment. So how to build your own personal protective equipment against nuclear fallout and keep that in your vehicle. I keep it in a 1-gallon Ziploc bag, 1 per seat. You can do that. That's very inexpensive and a very good thing you can have. Just keep them underneath underneath your seats, or in glove compartment or something like that. And that will do you very good. Okay, so I think we've covered it for nuclear radiation for the evening, or for nuclear warfare. Next week, we're going to do 2 chapters. I felt that we couldn't cover this one and another chapter this evening. We were already 1 hour and 3 minutes, so we definitely could not. Next week, we're going to do chapters 10 and 11. So chapter 10 is going to be War Zone Search and Rescue, which is basically what I was trained to do with CERT up here, the Community Emergency Response Team. And then chapter 11 is going to be Wartime Evasion and Escape. So those will be our 2 topics next week. Thank you all for being here. I greatly appreciate you. Don't forget to hit that like button. Come back, watch a couple minutes of the replay, leave a comment. That'll get me a little bit of more exposure so that we get more people added to us. Thank you so much for being here. Let me see. What did Sumi say? Sumi's in Canada. So yeah, it's way up there, way up north. And yep, I'm jealous. I would love to have that. That's one thing I miss about living in Germany. In Germany, when it gets up to 75, they go skinny dipping. When it gets to 85, they start dying of heat stroke. But it's really something else. Okay, and don't forget that our last Thursday of the month, our fiction book this month is Grace Under Fire by Franklin Horton. I am going to, he I forgot to do it for our first book review, which was the end of July. But Mr. Horton said that he will give us an autographed copy of Locker 9 to a winner that we'll do in a drawing. So I'm just going to hold off. I forgot. I told you I was going to do it last week. I didn't do it. I'm just going to hold off. I'm going to do that very first, within the first 10 minutes of our book review for book 2 of that series. So that way you're getting into book 2. We'll do a drawing for book 1 and see what we can do. Okay, so with that, if you have any questions, please go to Salt Creek Living and watch John and Terry Grammer. They're doing a great job with those explanations, and I think that you get something out of it. Okay, this is how you shall bless the Israelites. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. Or as we say in my church, Dona nobis pacem, give us peace. So remember that we're all in this together, so we can come out the other side together. Continue. This group is phenomenal. Continue to be kind, polite, and respectful with each other. Thank you so much for the way you conduct yourselves in chat. Can't tell you, it creates the environment that makes this channel the success that we're hoping to have, because it's all because of you. So we're all in this together, so we can come out the other side together, because togetherness is the key. Take care, everybody. Have a great evening. Thank God we're one step closer to peace in Ukraine, and we have to praise the Lord for that. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
I watched this wedding. You probably had 10% left.